you're paying more for your petrol and diesel top-up than ever before. Why are fuel prices skyrocketing? Is the government listening? Nipah, a new strain of encephalitis, has reportedly claimed 6 lives in Kerala within a week. Should you be worried? And these are not visuals you want to start your day with. But it's yet another Dalit man who was mercilessly beaten to death, the assault filmed with impunity. Is this our new normal? It's Tuesday, May 22nd. Petrol prices in India are currently hitting all-time highs. Delhi is at 76.57 rupees per litre, Mumbai is the highest at 84.4 rupees per litre, Chennai is at 79.47 rupees per litre and Kolkata is at 79.24 rupees per litre. The same is true for diesel prices, which are also breaking records. Delhi is at 67.82 rupees per litre, Mumbai is again the highest at 72.21 rupees per litre, Chennai is at 71.59 rupees per litre and Kolkata is at 70.37 rupees per litre. Ahead of the elections in Karnataka, state-owned oil companies decided to take a 19-day hiatus from changing rates daily, which is the norm. But now that those results are in, the companies are passing on the rise in global oil prices to consumers. This is why there is a sudden spike in prices. Global oil prices hit $80 a barrel for the first time in 4 years, in part because of a deliberate effort from oil-producing nations in OPEC to cut production of oil and keep prices high after years of lower rates affected their profits. But they're also being driven by geopolitical tensions, like US President Donald Trump's decision to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal, a political and economic crisis in Venezuela that has seen its oil production go into free fall, and continued instability in Syria, Libya, Yemen and elsewhere. The spike in oil prices presents a huge problem for the Indian government, which has been lucky to have low rates for most of Prime Minister Modi's tenure. The government's 2018-2019 budget presumed a global oil rate of $65 a barrel, but that figure is now at $80. A difference that could have a huge impact on India's import bill and, as a result, the country's fiscal and current account deficits. Making matters worse is the weakness of the rupee. On Monday, the rupee closed at 68.12 against the US dollar, and there are fears that it may even drop to 70 against the US dollar. The price of crude oil is behind some of this weakness, but it also reflects fears about India's economy and government spending going into an election year. Together, the oil prices and a weak rupee could lead to high inflation, which has otherwise been in control for most of the last few years. And it could also inspire anger against the government, since more than 50% of the oil prices are actually taxes and duties, which the government said it will not cut because that would mean less revenue for the government and a bigger deficit. Union Petroleum Minister Dharmendra Pradhan has promised that the government will do something, but he hasn't said what. Will the government cut duties and risk a larger fiscal deficit, or will it refuse to lower the prices while risking inflation and angry citizens a year before general elections are due? The Kerala government has confirmed that 3 people who died in the last week had Nipah virus encephalitis, a rare but emerging infectious disease. Though it has killed 3, the Kerala Health Department says there is no outbreak of the disease yet. But what do we know about Nipah? The World Health Organization calls Nipah a newly emerging zoonosis, which is a disease that can be transferred from animals to humans. It was first identified during an outbreak in Kampung Sungai Nipah in Malaysia in 1998, which is where its common name also comes from. Nipah causes fever and cold-like symptoms in its patients that quickly advance to encephalitis, which is the inflammation of the brain, and myocarditis, which is the inflammation of the heart. Because its symptoms are similar to Japanese encephalitis, it has in the past been mistaken for that disease. Currently, there is no vaccine or cure for Nipah infections, and treatment is restricted to intensive supportive care of patients till the symptoms subside. The virus's natural host is a fruit bat, although the virus has also been spread through pigs. The infection spreads from fruit bats that drink sap of date palm trees to people who drank raw date palm sap as toddy. The Nipah virus cannot be spread through air. Instead, it is transmitted through contact or bodily fluids. anyone who is suspected of having the disease should be isolated right away, since even coughing or sneezing could transmit the infection. After first emerging in Malaysia, Nipah has seen multiple outbreaks in Bangladesh with a number of fatalities. There have been 2 outbreaks in India, both in West Bengal districts close to Bangladesh. 71 people were infected in these 2 outbreaks, with 50 dying. The health department and doctors in Kerala say there is no need to panic since there is no outbreak yet. Bangladesh's experience with the disease has been to see more infections from December to May, stopping when the rain arrives, which is a positive sign for Kerala that the monsoon is around the corner. While there is hope this disease may be contained, India has another bigger healthcare headache.
लेकिन मैं आज इस मंच से एक घोषणा कर रहा हूं कि भारत ने वर्ष 2030 से 5 साल और पहले यानी 2025 तक टीबी को खत्म करने का लक्ष्य अपने तय किया है।
India had the highest number of new tuberculosis cases in 2016, close to 27.9 lakh. Of these, only 1.9 lakh registered themselves for treatment, but more than 8.5 lakh cases went missing or did not follow up after diagnosis. To make matters worse, as of today, India has no absolute data on the number of TB patients cured every year. A national TB survey has only been commissioned now for 2018. Considering the state of treatment across the country, the government's 2025 goal of eradicating TB seems like a distant dream. The reasons? According to India's first national anti-tuberculosis drug resistance survey, nearly a quarter of India's new tuberculosis patients are resistant to at least one of the 13 drugs used in India to fight the disease. The official TB control program mandates testing for resistance to just one of the 13 drugs. If a patient is resistant to it, they are directly treated for multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, or MDR-TB. Several of these patients are also resistant to MDR-TB drugs, which worsens their condition. Each patient instead should be tested for resistance to all 13 drugs. The increase in TB resistance comes from patients not completing the full course of medication. Thousands of patients stop treatment because they are unable to cope with the side effects of the drugs. Nausea, burning stomach, jaundice, skin rash, constant burning sensation, or loss of appetite. In India, TB is still diagnosed using a process called sputum microscopy, which fails to identify nearly 50% of cases. In 2013, the more effective system, cartridge-based nucleic acid amplification test, or CBNAT, was introduced. But there are only 628 CBNAT machines across the country because of high maintenance costs. Unless the lack of infrastructure, availability of necessary drugs, and rate of diagnosis is drastically improved, a TB-free India will remain a distant dream. A mug of coffee in Venezuela is paid for with a wad of notes taller than it. Medicines and healthcare are unavailable. Supermarkets empty. A kilo of rice or pasta costs Venezuelans their monthly minimum wage. Conditions like this have persisted since 2014. So why are we talking about it now? Because Venezuela has just re-elected President Nicolás Maduro, who many say created this debilitating crisis in the first place, for another 6 years. Once the richest Latin American country, Venezuela now faces an inflation of 13,000%. Its currency, the bolivar, is virtually worthless. The bolivar to dollar rate exchange on paper is 10:1. On the black market, the only place where the masses can get it, it's 12,000:1. Venezuela's crime rate is one of the highest in the world. An October 2016 poll showed 80% of Venezuelans wanted Maduro removed. Only 48% voters turned up, and the opposition boycotted the poll, maintaining that it was rigged. But Venezuelans are not outraged. Most of them, sunk in poverty after months of useless protest, are on the brink of hopelessness. So how did Venezuela, which has the world's largest oil reserves, land here? Former President Hugo Chavez ruled from 1999 to 2013. Widely loved, his government rode to success on surging oil prices. But Chavez failed to scale back Venezuela's oil dependence. Unrestrained spending on social reforms led to his popularity, but also a growing deficit. In 2013, Chavez named Maduro his successor. Maduro also failed to draw the economy back from oil dependence. He stopped the spending on reforms and concentrated on consolidating power. In 2014, oil prices crashed along with Venezuela's economy. If you spend your days sitting in front of your office computer and your nights slouching on your couch, think again. Apart from the risk of developing a bad posture, poor dietary habits, and cardiovascular diseases, you're also putting your butt at risk. You heard that right. Your desk-bound lifestyle could be leading to something called gluteal amnesia, or as it's commonly known, the dead butt syndrome. But can something as inconsequential as sitting be silently killing your butt? Well, yes. Here's what happens. There are two main muscles in your butt. This one is the tonic muscle responsible for your daily movement, and this one helps stabilize the pelvis. When we sit, the gluteus medius is resting, while the other group of muscles called the hip flexors are contracting. And when we end up sitting for a really long time, the gluteus medius forgets how to function. This is how our glutes become weak over time, and weak glutes can trigger constant pain in your back, your knee, and even your feet, since those muscles are working harder to compensate. Also, it turns out people with so-called active lifestyles are vulnerable to dead butt syndrome, just as they are prone to lower back pain. Though they may have very strong quads or hamstrings, their rear may face muscular imbalance that leads to gluteal amnesia. In 2011, Dr. Darren Bright, an American sports medicine physician in Ohio, talking about this in Orthopedics This Week, said, "In the last 5 to 10 years, we have realized just how much of an important role the gluteus medius plays in stabilizing the hips and pelvis in running. So there are some things you need to keep in mind to prevent your butt from dying. The first and the easiest thing to do is to take frequent breaks from sitting on your chair. You could set alarms on your phone to remind you to get up and walk around. Exercising will definitely help if you remember to put in squats and walking lunges into your daily routine. So while you take care of your hindquarters, we'll make sure we get off of them and bring you a fresh round of your morning fix first thing tomorrow."